Now, on this problem, I had to read this several times to figure out what was going on. So they divide the forest into 4 quadrants. Then they label the trees, right? Say there's 5,000 trees, and they randomly select out of those 5,000 trees 100 random trees and see where they are. Now, if they're randomly distributed, you would think that 25 trees would be in each quadrant. That's what they're trying to find out. So you would find, here's the actual observed count, and we would think that there would be 25 in each quadrant if they're randomly dispersed. So I kind of came up with that by looking at the answers first and then coming back to the question. So I had to read it a couple times and look at the answers. And I finally came up with D. So, because we're really trying to figure out the proportion of each quadrant for the entire forest, right? So that's for the population is 25%. We're just using a sample of 100 trees. So, letter D is the answer after all that. Number 20. Now, do you remember the formula? It is the observed minus the expected squared divided by the expected. Let me write that down. So what you do for each number is the observed number minus the expected number squared divided by the expected and add them all together. So it looks like, I think it's letter A. The observed minus the expected, because the expected is 25 divided by the expected. This one looks close, but it's not squared. So that's missing. No. Oh, A. There we go. So this one is a little bit tricky. Now the p-value for the chi-square goodness of fit test is 0.0129. So we're going to reject the null hypothesis. So we can get rid of D and E right away. Now remember, if they were randomly distributed, there would be 25 in each of the quadrants. That's what we're looking at. So we're saying that there's not 25 in each, which means they're not randomly distributed. So even though you would think that the observed data is kind of random, not the case. Okay, so reject the null hypothesis at the 5.05 alpha level. There is strong evidence that trees are not randomly distributed. Letter C. So we have 1/8, we're going to look at the proportion, 1/8 and 1/4, that's 2/8, and then 5/8, which is left over, 1/8, 2/8, and 5/8 makes 8/8, and that's yellow. But anyway, I'm going to look at the smallest proportion, because in other words, I have to have 5 in my sample. So let's see, what would be the smallest number of beads where I could take 1/8 of them, and they would be red. Well, some number times 1/8 is going to give me 5. If I was lucky, it is possible that 1/8 times 40, right? 1/8 of 40 is 5, and those would all be red. That is possible. There you go. D is the answer. That would be the smallest number of beads we could sample and still get what we need. Okay, that is the multiple choice.